You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Anthony Edwards, T-Wolves, they explode past OKC with a record-setting playoff performance, 143-101. That's your final tonight in Game 3. Wolves back on the board now, down 2-1 in this best-of-7 series. What's going on back in the lab? Back at it. Another T-Wolves postcast episode right here on the Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman with me. As always, give him a follow at Jack Borman13. Jack, you texted me at 6:49 tonight, and I know you always get nervous when I call out your text, but this is going to be a good one, I promise. 41 minutes before tip-off, and I quote, pre-game locker room vibes were great, like best I've seen in a while. It sounds like there was just something in the air tonight, and you could feel Wolves would not be going quietly into the night down 3 right back at home in front of the home crowd, right at the Target Center. I mean, you could just feel something pre-game with this tight-knit group, couldn't you?
I certainly could. I mean, going in that locker room, everybody was laughing, having a great time. Julius Randle, I've seen Julius Randle in the pregame locker room maybe 3 or 4 times. He just is normally getting his work done, working out, doing stuff where the timing just never really works out. But he was in the locker room holding court with Mike Conley, with the media members, just shooting the breeze about whatever, about what summers in Minnesota are like, about just where we grew up, just trying to get to know, all these different media members that were in there. Could not have been looser or more laid back. And the second I walked out of that locker room, I felt so much better about the Timberwolves' chances in this game because, look, it's a lot different than the series we have on the other side of the league where you're down 0-2 going on the road like the Timberwolves were last year against Dallas. But this year, I mean, coming home, I think these guys know that they had played, 4 or 5 really solid quarters against this Oklahoma City team and just kind of let go of the rope for 2 different 5-minute segments. But coming home, they just had all the confidence in the world. And I think that showed. And the Timberwolves certainly wanted to throw the first punch. And boy, did they do that. But yeah, I just think when guys are that loose, that's something that you certainly take note of being in that locker room. And it was fun for us to be a part of, and we all kind of looked at each other at halftime and said there was a tone that was kind of being said in that locker room that these guys were not, all that concerned, that they still were in great spirits and knew they just had to come forth and put together a businessman-like effort, professional effort, and that's certainly what happened.
You want some energy to get the home crowd pumped right away and had not had a slam dunk, right? I know it's just slam dunk, but still, that's something that energizes the crowd throughout these first 2 games. He had 2 in the first, 7-8 minutes, plus a bevy of other great fun plays, sequences, and stats that we'll get into. Lots to get into. Biggest turning point tonight, the Wolves game MVP. Huge preview of Game 4 plus Terrence Shannon Jr. things. But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Monarch Money. Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So much to get into. I'm not going to do the entire breakdown, deep dive replay. But, I mean, again, you can't start the game any better than the Wolves did, Jack. They hold OKC to 14 points in the first quarter. You're up 20 after the first 12 minutes. That place sounded like it was going to explode on the broadcast. And it was everything that we've been talking about, right? Turnovers, points off turnovers. Again, Ant with 2 dunks in the first 10 minutes, hitting open shots, hitting open threes, winning on the glass. You name it, they did it. 31-point lead at halftime. But even with OKC, right? No lead is safe. So they come out in the third quarter. They add 6 more to that lead, make it 37. And then early fourth quarter, here comes your backup. So 143-101. That's your final tonight. Again, Wolves in a must-win. Send a message that they would not go quietly into the night. They claw back into the series now, down 2-1. How are we feeling big picture, right? Take a step back here. 3-game sample, because we've got a little, tale of 2 stories right now. Jekyll and Hyde, so to speak. But the bottom line is, the Wolves turn things around, and they should be feeling pretty great about themselves and their chances now, I would think, to tie this thing back up to a piece before they go back to OKC.
Yeah, for sure. I think that this, I found myself comparing it a lot to last year's Western Conference Finals. Maybe that's not a great thing, but I think that the Wolves felt a lot more helpless in that series than they did in this one. I think you kind of know, all right, we put together, again, like I said, 4 or 5 really strong quarters. We're right with them. I don't think this Oklahoma City team is one that the Wolves fear. I think there's a healthy level of respect there, but I don't think the Wolves feel inferior to the Thunder whatsoever. And that certainly showed tonight. And I just think that this Timberwolves team understands that, this crowd is insane, and they knew that was going to be the case, but they also have to give the crowd a reason to get into the game early. And they brought that on the defensive end of the floor. And I think that was super noticeable early in the game. Like you were talking about, they just came out and set a tone, and it was super impressive to be in the building. You said that it sounded like it was going to explode. It certainly, to me, felt a lot like Game 6 against Denver last year in the Western Conference semifinals, when the Wolves won that game by 45, and it was just every single bucket, every single stop, every single, out of bounds call that went the Wolves' way. The crowd was just going bananas, and it was super fun to be in an environment like that, especially when things are going your way. But yeah, the other thing that just big picture I'd like to point out that I pointed out against the Warriors, that I pointed out multiple times throughout that series. The Thunder now are going on 3 weeks of playing every other day. And they had 2 days off instead of 1 in between Game 6 and Game 7 of that last series. But everybody talks about how deep Oklahoma City is, and they certainly are a deep team. But I still think even if you've got 9-10 guys you feel comfortable playing, like Mark Daigneault does, they've pretty much settled on a contingent of 7.5 or 8 guys that he goes to when things get tight. And you just kind of wonder if that's starting to become a factor, or may become more of a factor now with every game in the series being every other day, and the Wolves, having, just as much depth as Oklahoma City does in terms of guys they can turn to and come out and play with some fire and aggression. So I think that's something to keep in mind. But overall, I just think that tonight was much less about the Thunder and much more about the Wolves, right? They had 120 points on 56, 51, 80 shooting splits when the starters got pulled with about 8 minutes left. They're up 42. I think this Oklahoma City team will not care about this game at all. I don't think that will impact how they play whatsoever coming Monday night for Game 4. Just in terms of their approach, all those guys are super connected, super professional. I've no doubt that they're going to come forth and really bring it. But tonight was much more about the Wolves for me, and that there was a sense of confidence with every single guy that was out there on the court tonight of, we can all do this. We're now seeing us do it both inside the arc, outside the arc, defensively on the perimeter was something they hadn't really seen, for prolonged stretches beyond just one half. And the fact that they put together two great halves there, I just think it has to give them so much more confidence moving forward. And I do think completely changes the trajectory of this series.
Bless you. Jack, I know we're going to get into the turning point here in segment 2, but a mini turning point for me, just to see like where OKC was handling this just avalanche that the Wolves were throwing at them, punch after punch. The 8-second violation. It's just like, you just don't see that from them very often. And that was on top of multiple turnovers that they had coughed up as well. But for SGA to get called with that 8-second violation mid-second quarter, it was like, mentally, they just seem a little locked out of it, just not necessarily as tight on the reins that we saw OKC in their home building in games 1 and 2. Again, we'll get into the turning point here later on. But first, let's get into our game MVP.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
Today's game MVP, again, T-Wolves win this one 143-101. Jack, who was it and why?
Yeah, I know that a lot of people have been frustrated with me for some of my criticism of tonight's game MVP. Not tonight, but in previous games here. But what Anthony Edwards did in the first 5 minutes of this game is what megastars do, and guys that are capable of not just coming out and scoring 16 points and outscoring the other team in an entire quarter, like Anthony Edwards did in the first quarter of this game. But when you see your best player get in a stance and play physical at the point of attack and move his feet and fight over screens and get deflections, create loose balls, and then go and win, 3 or 4 50-50 balls that he did in the first quarter, turn steals into dunks on the other end of the floor, get into the paint and grab contested rebounds, and had 5 rebounds in the first 5 or 6 minutes of this game. I think it just sends a loud and clear message to the rest of your guys that it's like, hey, I'm not letting us lose tonight. I'm making sure that I'm playing with this energy. So all of you better make sure that you're bringing the requisite energy. And I think when your star comes out and does that, it just breathes confidence up and down the roster. And I think it got the crowd locked into the game from the jump. I think sometimes when this place is packed and fans are on their feet until the first basket goes, there can just be kind of some palpable anxiety. And certainly we are a jaded and scarred group of people as Minnesota sports fans. But I just think Ant just kind of lit the fuse and exploded Target Center in the first couple minutes of this game. And that totally impacted both ends of the floor because the crowd was in it on every single stop, and the Wolves were playing with pace, getting into the half court quickly, playing against cross matches and scrambling defenses and finishing inside. And, Ant saw 5 of his first 6 shots go down, made a couple of threes early after he's been struggling from 3 throughout this series. I think all that was super important. And, for him to have 30 points in 30 minutes was just tremendous. But again, for me, it had everything to do with his defense. And I think, even in the last postcast, right, I got on Ant for, just kind of letting the game wash away in that third quarter of what was a very winnable game, and did not do that tonight. Made sure that he was leaving absolutely no doubt in this building that the Timberwolves were going to make this a series. And look, you got to come back and you got to do the same thing in game 4 because he's capable of doing it. He just showed us he's capable of doing it. And you know what? Ant may miss his first 5 shots on Monday, and I don't care about that. But if he's willing to get in a stance and guard and make life that difficult for Jalen Williams, it will be a different series regardless of how his offense goes and whether shots are falling or not. So Anthony Edwards was far and away the game MVP tonight for the tone that he set and the leadership that he displayed. Deserves every ounce of credit for what transpired here tonight. And I think, that's going to have to be something that, continues for the rest of this series.
I wish we had all night. I would ask you about the maturation process from last Western Conference Finals to this Western Conference Finals, from Ant specifically being down 0-2 and just the difference that you saw from last year to now tonight. But let's keep this thing moving. Plenty more deep dive, biggest turning point, plus Terrence Shannon Jr. things. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Monarch Money. You ever go to your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Dining out, online shopping, entertainment. So easy to lose track, isn't it? Well, that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your own personal CFO. Monarch Money gives you full visibility and control over your finances. And it's not just another budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending, all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and instead you start building wealth. I know when I started using Monarch Money, I realized how much I was spending on streaming services, HBO Max, Apple TV, Hulu, you name it, I had it. But now I budget smarter. I save more than ever. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your entire first year. All right, Jack, this all boils down to something super simple for me. You're telling me in games 1 and 2, the Wolves never played Terrence Shannon Jr., okay? They got swept off the floor. Then in game 3, the young buck gets some major minutes, and the Wolves just body OKC. Tell me, look in my eyes, Jack. Tell me it's a coincidence. My guy, Terrence Shannon Jr., preach about it, because he was just everything I've been banging the table for tonight and more, probably.
Yeah, I mean, for TJ, the second that I saw him walk to the scorer's table, I was sitting next to my brother Kyle Tigey, and we just kind of looked at each other like, this is going to be fun. And it was something that, look, I was calling for it at the start of the fourth quarter of game 2 that I would like to see, one of or both of TJ Shannon or Jalen Clark, just to see what they can do in a small sample to try and just send Chris Finch a message of like, hey, I'm good for 10 or 12 or 15 minutes in any game the rest of this series, because I just proved, garbage time or not, all these minutes are valuable in terms of evaluating these guys, that I'll be good to go. And Chris Finch didn't do that. And part of me wonders if Chris Finch didn't do that specifically because he knew that Terrence Shannon was going to be a factor in tonight's game. And Chris Finch, I think probably had a conversation with Mike Conley before the game of like, hey, we're going to need you more tonight in this game. And Dante DiVincenzo played less minutes in this game. Naz Reid played less minutes in this game. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker played less minutes. I mean, all those guys played less minutes in the game because Terrence Shannon Jr. entered the rotation at the start of the second quarter. A total divergence from what Chris Finch normally does at the start of second quarters. And what does TJ do? He comes in, first possession of the game, gets an and one after attacking from the corner. Second possession comes down, pull-up jumper that was just cash from the nail. I mean, it's just the confidence that he played with, and then, gets a steal and leaks out in transition and just runs past everybody. I just think the physicality and aggression that he plays with, you can live with a couple of the, heat check hook shots or a couple of the fouls that he may have, because he's out there just busting his tail. He's not paying attention. He's not, the game's not moving too quickly for him. It's just, things that you might expect from a rookie or a small mistake here or there. But I just think the positive energy that he was able to create was incredible. I mean, and he outscored Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in this game. I think if I would have told you that TJ Shannon in this game would outscore Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you probably would have said, like, I don't know what you would have said.
That's 5,000 to 1.
I'm writing,
before the
your
game.
Fan fiction, but that's what happened. I mean, if you want to look to it, Inpredictable is a great website and great NBA stats website. It has a lot of, kind of cool advanced analytics and, and they just have a straight win probability added metric for every single player in the game, based on a whole host of things, runs, how the team's performing in all different areas of the game when a player's on the court. I mean, Terrence Shannon Jr. had the second highest win probability added of any Timberwolves player in this game behind Anthony Edwards. And I just think that made total sense to me. And it came at an important moment, right? The Wolves had a great first quarter, right? But that doesn't necessarily matter if you don't bring it to open the second quarter. And TJ Shannon and Mike Conley had the first 10 points in those non-Ant minutes to kind of send a message like, yeah, this game's over. Like we're not letting the Thunder come back in this game. And I think too, TJ played so well that it's going to force Chris Finch's hand to play him more. And Chris Finch said in his post-game press conference, just down the hall here, said that you're definitely going to see him more. And I think that, Chris Finch potentially letting a game go from a win to I'm not going to sit here and saying that playing TJ Shannon would have been the difference between winning and losing game 2. I'm not going to say that. But in the fourth quarter, part of me wonders, again, like I said, maybe he didn't put TJ Shannon in the game because he kind of wanted to keep some of that film off the off the internet, if you will, for Oklahoma City to look at, and instead puts him in tonight. And I think is going to give Oklahoma City some things to look at, because he was out there when Jalen Williams was out there, big Jalen Williams, and just blew past him. So I think that TJ's out there. You're probably going to see more of Kenrich Williams or Aaron Wiggins out there, maybe playing small ball 4 or 5 instead of big Jalen Williams. So that's something that we'll have to look forward to as well. But for TJ Shannon to give you 15 points off the bench, lead the Wolves in scoring off the bench, be the third leading scorer in this game, is just tremendous. And I think, again, that's why you're at the spot that you're drafting at for the Wolves. I can't think off the top of my head where TJ Shannon was drafted, but it was late first
24, 25-ish, right?
Sure, 24, 25-ish. I mean, like, that this is why you draft a guy that's got all the experience that he does. And he's played in a lot of big time moments. He'd been the guy at Texas Tech and Illinois, and isn't going to be scared of these moments. And it's just really cool to see it pay off on the stage that did.
27th overall pick, SOD, steal of the draft. And you texted me a great stat per OptaStats too. Shannon's 15 points are the most by a Timberwolves rookie off the bench in an entire game in team playoff history.
And he did that in the first half. His 9 in the first half set the record.
Yeah, half that is like, okay, that's a pretty low bar, but nonetheless, again, speaks volumes for Terrence Shannon Jr. To your point, man, for him to be, as a rookie, to have his head on so straight and play within the confines of the system and not let the basketball IQ stuff out kind of exhaust him and overweigh him and make him, just look like a rookie at times, right? But to still play so fast and fearless with the ball downhill. It's just a strange combination that has made me so excited after watching him all year last year at Illinois, and then obviously seeing him just ball out in the Vegas Summer League as well. So we got to keep moving on, but yeah, just big stuff from Terrence Shannon Jr. that clearly gave them an extra spark on top of what was already just a great Timberwolves game top to bottom.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
All right, biggest turning point in this one was when and why. Like, when did things go so far in the Wolves' favor, right? You thought to yourself, even with OKC being, the comeback merchant that we've seen them be, the Wolves had this one in the bag tonight.
Yeah, I think, Ant just playing the way that he did at the start of the game, I think was kind of the turning point for me as a whole. But if you want to look at another area, too, that we can talk about here, one key moment of the game, the Timberwolves come out of halftime a little lackluster. It's human nature when you're up 30, whatever, at halftime. They lost the first 3 minutes, 11-2. The lead gets down to 22. So that, you could continue to play poorly, and then it gets down to 15, and there's plenty of ball game left then at that point. But for the Timberwolves to respond, they had a terrible possession out of an ATO that wasn't really going anywhere, and then Ant hits Jaden McDaniels for a corner three, and then a couple possessions later, another situation where the Thunder really extended their pressure, and the Wolves are having trouble just getting the ball across half court and getting into some offense. And Jaden McDaniels knocks down another 3-pointer. Those were the 2 threes that he made in this game. Both came at somewhat important moments. But I think for the Wolves to respond to that, they're only up 22 at that point, to then respond with a 31-11 run over the next 8 minutes to kick the lead out to 42 and just kind of leave no doubt, I think was really important, again, just from a confidence perspective of like, hey, all right, if we lock in, this is what we're capable of doing. And the fact that they went on 3 or 4 rather lengthy runs where it wasn't necessarily just their offense that was humming, but it was their defense, and they were feeding off the energy that their defense created. And I think that's kind of where it starts for this team. And again, like, look, this is from Automatic NBA. It was a great follow on Twitter. No team all year had a turnover differential of +4 or better against Oklahoma City in the first half. The Wolves did that tonight. No team all year had a field goal percentage differential of at least +28% in the first half, and the Wolves did that again tonight. So 2 things team had never done against Oklahoma City. You do it in the first half, and I think those 2 things are highly correlated because of the way that they played defense and then turned it into offense, and the way that they kind of kept that train rolling all night. But again, I think, do we want to get into a quick defensive adjustment that we saw from the Wolves?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me on that end of the ball for the Wolves was that Rudy Gobert was playing significantly higher up on the floor. He wasn't playing in a deep drop. He was playing up closer to the level of the screen. He was hedging. He was showing at times and was really trying to be active and forcing Oklahoma City to get into their dribble handoff and high pick and roll actions a lot further away from the basket so that they couldn't just snake in and take those open mid-range jump shots. I think the way that he pushed all their actions further up the floor was really important. We talked about how Golden State did a really good job of that in the last series. That was something the Wolves did a good job of tonight in this game. And I think as a result, it just had both Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams very uncomfortable. Coming into tonight in games 1 and 2, SGA had 3 total turnovers. He had 4 in the first half tonight. And then Jalen Williams had 0 turnovers in games 1 and 2. He had 4 tonight. So the way that the Wolves made those two guys particularly uncomfortable, I thought was really strong. And what I liked as well was that, not only did Anthony Edwards up his defensive intensity, but I liked the way that he was fighting screens intentionally to ice the ball screen. So on a side pick and roll where Jalen Williams really likes to get involved there, they were icing those ball screens, meaning they were forcing Jalen Williams to the baseline rather than to the middle of the floor. And I think when you let SGA and Jalen Williams get into the middle of the floor and you have to send help to the middle of the floor rather than, one side of the floor, you're just in trouble as a defense, because then guys 1 pass away and even 2 passes away are just going to have a much easier time getting open looks. And the way that the Timberwolves force those guys to play, on the sides of the court rather than in the middle of the court allowed them to send better help. They had guys in the gaps like we've seen Oklahoma City do against Ant in the first 2 games. And so I thought that the way that the Wolves responded defensively, getting away from just kind of their standard deep drop and trying to keep everything in the middle of the floor in front of them and stay home on guys on the outside was really important. I mean, they made Chet Holmgren and Alex Caruso get up, 7 or 8 threes in the first 6 or 7 minutes of this game. I think they only made 1 of them. Chet made 1 of them. I think Caruso was 0 of 2 or 0 of 3 on those threes in that first quarter. So that was super important. And I think that's something that you're going to continue to see the Wolves do moving forward. I think what you might try to see is see Jalen Williams handling the ball more in the middle of the floor rather than SGA. That's what we saw in the second half of game 2. And he was really successful there, or excuse me, second half of game 1. And he was really successful and just getting a little bit more comfortable getting into the game. So that's something that I would expect from Oklahoma City in this next game. But yeah, I think if the Timberwolves can just play with that level of tenacity, that fight, that physicality, being willing to fly around, win 50-50 balls. I think Oklahoma City really won those 50-50 balls in the first 2 games, and the Wolves won them tonight. So look, the better defensive activity, certainly a huge plus tonight, and that started with Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert at the top of the floor, and they deserve a ton of credit.
Well said there. Good breakdown. Couple minutes left. What's the vibe in the locker room now heading into game 4? That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode also brought to us by BetterHelp. When your schedule gets packed, work projects, kids, whatever it may be, it's easy to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, they become more important than ever. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, it's time to give BetterHelp a try. Entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So simple, too. All you got to do, you fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today. You're getting 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, game 4. Game 4 Monday, right? 3-game sample now, Jack. Tale of 2 stories here. Again, Jekyll and Hyde, so to speak. Games 1 and 2, you just can't look any worse. Tonight in game 3, you can't look any better. What's in store for game 4 now? What do the Wolves need to do when they start this thing? All tied back up now, 0-0, Monday night at the Target Center, 7:30 p.m.
Yeah, I think you're going to see more ball pressure from the Thunder. I think Mike Conley's proven to be the only guy that can really handle that pressure atop the key and crossing half court effectively. I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dante DiVincenzo have still really struggled in those areas, and I think that's what's prevented them from playing more minutes. I think Mike Conley is probably going to be relied upon a little bit more than anybody on the Timberwolves would like, except for, maybe Mike. But so I think that's important. I think Oklahoma City is going to bring a lot more pressure at the top of the key. But again, I think what you also have to look for is the Timberwolves bench players continuing to play a little bit better. I think, having TJ Shannon coming in as a button that they can, press, probably take some pressure off of those main 3 bench guys and maybe just freeze them up a little bit to just kind of play their game rather than feeling like, okay, the game is kind of hanging on whether we make shots or miss shots. But all 3 of those guys, Naz, Nickeil, and Dante, made 3-pointers in the first quarter. They all made 2 threes tonight. So I think that was really important from them. They were 11 of 17 overall for 28 points in this game. And I just think that if all those guys can make a couple of shots, can feel some rhythm on offense and get into it, I just think it has to give every single player on the Timberwolves a little bit more confidence, knowing that, okay, these non-Ant minutes or these non-Randall minutes were really going to struggle to score like they did at times in games 1 and 2. And I think that the offense functioned a little bit better overall without Mike Conley on the floor in this game. And I think that was, in no small part as well due to what Julius Randle was able to do. I think that, his just ability to go get a bucket on his own was really important in this game. And I think for him too deserves a lot of credit for the way that he bounced back from what was a less than stellar version of himself in game 1, or excuse me, in game 2. I think, tonight ends up here with, where are we here? 24 points on 15 shots, 3 assists, no turnovers in this game. Plus team high plus 38 in 30 minutes was tremendous. And I just think he was a constant source of positive energy all night long. Was parading around the arena saying, we're in Minnesota now, we're home now. And the crowd loved all that. And I think that, you asked, kind of 3-game sample size now, what are we looking at of being real versus maybe fake? I think that it being a good series for Julius Randle is still a real thing. I think, he was just really chaotic and kind of out of character in game 2. And I think the way that he played tonight, the way that he played in game 1 has been much more in line with what we've seen from him the entire postseason. And I just think having a guy that's 6'9", 250 pounds, who's super physical, really athletic, and can score at all 3 levels really is tough to guard, especially on a team without really any true power forward sized guys. And so Randall's going to continue to be part of the story. And I think if he and Ant can continue getting downhill the way that they need to in game 4, that'll be really important. In games 1 and 2, only 37% of the Timberwolves total shot attempts came in the paint. And tonight that number was 44%. And the Timberwolves shot 63% from 2 tonight. So I think that was really important. They had 64 points in the paint combined in games 1 and 2. They had 56 tonight, so much better there. And then just a couple of things in terms of guys just finishing, right? Like we talk about the NBA as a make or miss league. And it's, I guess with a 3-game sample, it's too early to tell whether, what's going to be real or fake just in terms of shooting efficiency. But games 1 and 2, Timberwolves were 33% on jump shots, 2-point jump shots, 3-point jump shots, 44% on layups. And tonight they were 55% on jumpers and 59% on layups. So much more in line with the type of team that we've seen for the majority of the season. So I think, look, if you can just kind of get guys in a rhythm early on and play through Randall, play through Ant, and then kind of let everybody else feed off of that while bringing great energy on the defensive end of the floor and just kind of flying around and making Oklahoma City Stars uncomfortable like they did tonight. If, based on what we saw tonight, if you try to force the others for Oklahoma City to go win them the game, I think they're going to have a tough time doing it. But that's kind of what you get sometimes on the road in the playoffs. But hey, kudos to the Wolves for showing that this thing's a lot more, even than everyone may have thought coming into game 3. And I think game 4 will be a ton of fun.
This is what you'll be talking about.
You're on mute, sir.
Thank you. I was just going to say, you already pointed out a lot of this, but I just want to point out, 48 hours ago, Jack, we were talking about strip it down. Rudy gone. Nas, I don't know. Did he play the 5? Conley toast, but like 48 hours later, we're sitting here. What's the water cooler talk at work on Monday after this one? Like, what's everybody texting in the T-Wolves group chats? Just given the way the Wolves sparked so much life, so much confidence back into the entire state of Minnesota right now, such a dominating 143-101 victory when they needed it the most, 2 backs against the wall.
Yeah, I think everybody's probably just grateful that I think winning tonight makes game 4 a lot more fun. That was kind of some of the conversation in the media room media dinner tonight of saying, hey, if they're going to win one of these games at home, make it be tonight so that the next 48 hours are a little bit more fun for these fans. But yeah, I just think, hey, it shifts more pressure onto Oklahoma City, right? I think, if the Timberwolves come out and really, lay it on Oklahoma City the same way they did tonight, just with their physicality, obviously they're not going to win by 42 points again, but if you can come out early, throw another big first punch and have it be with your defense to start out with, I think, hey, that it just builds more and more pressure on SGA and Jalen Williams in a way that, I don't know that they've felt a ton throughout these playoffs. I think, even though Denver took them 7 games, I still think that a lot of people thought that Oklahoma City was going to win that series just because of how compromised physically Denver was between Jamal Murray being sick, Michael Porter having that significant shoulder issue, Aaron Gordon having the calf issue. So, I just think it'll be interesting to see how Oklahoma City responds to some adversity, because that's a great team. They've been a historically great defense all year long and really proud group. So I think they'll get a best punch. And I think, a lot of Wolves group chats are probably just going to be sending a lot of the great tweets that I've already been seeing on the timeline while we've been going here. And just talking about, I think what this team can be when it's fully firing, and it's certainly fun to watch. And I think it'll probably just be a lot of, I'm proud of the fight that this team had, and that I think we've got a little bit of a series here. So
T-Wolves wake up that sleeping giant within. They cruise past OKC again, 143-101. That's your final tonight in Game 3. As always, huge shout out to all you guys, all the everydayers out there that always make us your first listen. All you guys coming in the chat with us from game to game. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And go follow Jack at Jared Borman 13 live from the Target Center throughout the entire playoffs. We'll catch you here. Game 4, Monday nights, another 7:30 p.m. tip. But until then, signing out.